Hello there, I am Aoife Wilson, I can say my own name, Aoife Wilson, Senior Communications Developer at Larian Studios. Scripter, I barely know her. Yes, that was a really good joke. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for telling me what a great joke that was. Hey, I might not know her, but I know someone who does. Hello, wonderful guest.
Hi, Aoife.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Of course. I'm Mihail. I'm a senior gameplay scripter at Larian, and I worked on a bunch of really cool things in BG3, which we'll be talking about today.
You really, really did. I'm very, very excited. I had to stop myself from grilling Mihail before the cameras roll because I was like, no, save it for content. It must be on content. So,
hello.
You must get this a lot, right? What is a scripter?
Yes.
What does a gameplay scripter do?
Yeah.
I have developer in my job title and I don't know this. Please enlighten me.
I mean, it's a common question because in a lot of places script is more related to writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of people
Yes, it's
assume,
not in a narrative sense. Yes.
Yes, a lot of people assume it's writing scripts for plays and stuff similar in games, but no. We're kind of the mix between programming and design.
Mm-hmm.
We sit in the middle of the two, and we kind of get the story from the narrative team,
mm-hmm.
and then we try to translate that into gameplay by writing some code.
That's okay.
Rough. That's the short one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a longer explanation, but it's the short one.
Hey, we've got. Well, we haven't got all day. We've got an hour, but we're going to get into that even
Sounds
more.
good.
But let's rewind first a little bit. Tell me a little about you. Tell me a little bit about your history of games. Have you always played games?
Yeah, I think I have a photo when I was 3 years old, or just before that, with the Sega playing Sonic, and my mom has always said that she hasn't been able to get me off the console. Although I was mostly a PC player, but at a very early age, I was mostly playing the Sega. And then I got a PC when I was age 7.
7?
Yeah, it was shared family PC, but
I was
still hogged it most of the time. And yeah, and ever since I've played a lot, probably more than I should have. But no, it's great.
We're from two different houses and we met in the middle because I started off on Nintendo and moved to PC.
Yeah.
What were your first games? Do you remember?
On the PC?
Yeah. Oh, well, on Sega and then on PC.
On Sega, it was growing up with Sonic initially.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was 5, we played a lot of Mortal Kombat with my cousins.
Oh my god!
I know, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja
That
Turtles.
rotoscoping though.
Yeah, a lot more probably. There was a bunch of weird, obscure games. I remember playing some Scooby-Doo murder investigation games. It was a great time of craziest things. Of course, the Lion King and the Aladdin.
Gosh.
They were great. I couldn't beat the second level.
They were so hard. I used to come home after school and play the Lion King game over and over again, and that wildebeest stampede.
Yes.
I can see it. It's burned into my brain even now.
For me, it's the giraffes. Oh my god.
Oh, jumping on their heads.
Oh my god. For so long. but yeah, I think Sonic is probably my fondest memory. I used to play with my mom, and when I get to a tough part, she would help me, and that's great. That's really great.
Games, bring families together, then tearing them apart, but then bringing them together again.
I think that's accurate.
So, spent childhood playing games a lot.
Yeah.
When did you decide that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so...
Because you didn't go into games initially, did you?
No, I really wanted to make games since maybe I was around 8.
Mm-hmm.
There was a friend of my mom, I call him Uncle Tony.
Mm-hmm.
He used to live in Germany, and he was a programmer, and he used to bring me video games on CDs and stuff like that at the time. And I didn't have access at the time to most games. And he would give me some stuff, and he would say, if you want to make video games, you should learn programming. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I want to do programming. So I went into a math school, and then I started learning programming when I was 14. I was like, this sucks. I really don't want to do this. I had no idea there's other ways to make games at the time.
Right.
Then learn how to code. Now I love coding. Or even on my spare time, I like to pick up some projects. But at the time, I was like, I can't do this my whole life. So I ended up going into architecture, which is a bit more designy. But yeah, I'll get to that. But that's roughly when, maybe when I was 7, 8, it's the first time I really wanted to make video games.
Wow.
But then I picked up back later again.
But it so you were like, that's not really an option. So let me see what the other alternatives are. And architecture, weirdly, I can kind of see why that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in hindsight, I didn't go into architecture because I thought that's going to be useful to make games one day. I had no idea. That was before even Unity and just like that were easily accessible. And that's 2010 is when I went to uni. But I kind of wanted to draw, but I didn't have the dedication to learn how to draw properly, and I was pretty bad at it. So I was like, yeah, but architecture is more like maths drawing. It doesn't require the art skills, but there's a lot of design. And I was like, okay, let's try it.
Very precise, right? Like to scale and I mean, I guess problem solving too.
Yeah, I ended up liking it, but also hating it. Like uni it was good, but I realized architecture is just not for me. I think there was at some point where I realized I just don't like buildings. I was like, what am I doing studying architecture?
Buildings. I don't want a roof over my head.
I don't find buildings interesting or attractive as much. But I did love the idea in architecture of designing space for people to use.
Right.
And that's usually the best part of design is like, how do you design a space for a person to go into? What do they see? Where they go? How do they inhabit the space? Urban design was very interesting, how the public spaces function. And I ended up doing a bunch of dissertations and stuff like that on video games later, because I had a really supportive professor there who was very into Assassin's Creed and games like that, which have architectural significance.
Absolutely.
And he was very supportive, and I wrote a dissertation on that, and then did a master's with Unity at the time, mostly just at that point trying to see what it's like making games.
Top 3 gaming buildings, go.
Gaming buildings. So when I told you I hate buildings, like usually it's not the buildings that catch my attention. So that was a hard question.
Hey, Assassin's Creed's got loads of them. You can climb them and everything.
Yep.
In the meantime, Ogo7 says, in Aoife's defense, the developer in her title is about developing an atmosphere. Thank you so much. I think so too. I'm not a developer of many things, but I can develop an atmosphere, absolutely. I mean, it might not be a good one, but it's still there. And they also say, from architect of buildings to architect of code. Yeah. That's you.
Yeah.
I do love what you said about like designing spaces for people to use, because that's kind of exactly what your job is now.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so clever.
And it's funny because even when I was applying to video games, I didn't know that this role existed. Initially, I thought I would be going for an environment artist because I was making buildings, knew how to use spaces, so I thought level design and environment art are the one and the same thing. So I was like, I'm good at the level design, I think. Like I can make space design, but I'm not good at the visual stuff. So I spent 2 years practicing like ZBrushes and 3D modeling. And it's like, that's what you need for an environment artist. And again, that was the part of architecture that I didn't like. But I focused on it because I thought I need to fill up a gap, right? But I ended up applying for a job, and it was an environment art job. I didn't get it, and immediately after a level design job came out, and I was reading it, and I was like, that's just the good parts without the bad parts. I was like, what? So I ended up applying. It was at Ubisoft Sofia. I was back home at the time for 2 years for a different reason. And I only got the job, and I realized in Ubisoft there was a split between the world level designers and the quest level designers.
Okay.
Quest level designers is essentially what we do now in Larian, is the gameplay scripting team, but it was called different, just making the missions, the NPCs and all of that. I didn't even know this was a thing before going into the industry. Yeah. And they only put me there because they needed people in that team.
Had you, up to that point, because you'd obviously gone to uni and done bits and stuff, had anything led you back to games, or were you always playing games in the background and you were like, do you know what, I'm gonna make this change. I've decided now this is what I want to do.
Oh yeah. So I was playing games all the time. I remember like having like dissertation or whatever, so the project submission, and I was playing games. I think Undertale came out when my dissertation was due, and I couldn't stop playing. But I think it was around I think it was third year. So there was an interesting point in my architectural degree where I failed third year by 0.5%, and it was very demotivating because at the time I had already completely started losing interest and motivation to do it. So I could see it, but I didn't know what else to do with my life. And I ended up reapplying for the next year anyway. You could do that. And they accepted me, which was no problem. But I was like, I need to decide what to do. And when I entered back, I started with a dissertation for video games. I was like, maybe there is a way to transition.
Mm-hmm.
There is a use case for architecture in video games. I started researching more about it. And then fifth year, I focused entirely on learning Unity and virtual spaces. So I tried to transition that way by keeping the architecture thing because it didn't.
But that's clever. You were like, you were sort of pivoting in a way that opened doors in the industry that you wanted to get into while using the skills that you'd already developed.
Yeah. And it was a big difference with how much I enjoyed my degree. So I enjoyed the fourth and fifth year so much more because I was doing something I wanted to do. It was night and day difference. It was very fun.
Mm-hmm. And you, I mean, we're enjoying buildings a little bit more at that point?
A little bit, yeah. I think so. I still prefer virtual spaces.
Yeah. 100%. So you'd applied for the job and you'd realized that the departments were split. Yeah. And so what happened then?
I mean, essentially, it was choosy. No, it wasn't even choosy because I didn't choose, but it was one team was doing the architectural bits, level designers, what they do normally in video games, making all the spaces, arranging the buildings, and the other team was doing like the missions. And I could see why they were the same job because they're interacting a lot, but they're very different skill sets. But interestingly, I think both of them are kind of encompassed by architecture that I've studied, because the quest design is entirely that thing. How do people use the space? Yes. Because we script how the players move, what the players see, what is the next objective, and all of that stuff. Well, level design is more about the environment, part of it, the spaces, the places. So it's both were interesting. I was really, really happy in hindsight to discover the quest design. I think I preferred it more. I really liked to code after all. I realized I probably should have stuck with it a little longer as I was a kid, but I was too busy doing kid
come on,
stuff.
you can't tell a 14-year-old like this. There's other interesting stuff to do. But so all the tools that you were using at that time, I assume they weren't the same tools that you were learning to code.
No, it was entirely new stuff. Yeah. Because they also had in-house engines, so I learned everything from scratch there.
Yeah, so because you're saying you were messing around with ZBrush and stuff, was that sort of stuff self-taught? Yeah.
I self-taught ZBrush, 3ds Max Substance, Painter's Designer, all of that stuff for texturing. It was interesting, but I wasn't passionate about it. I think I probably, if I stuck with it longer, I could have gone that route. But scripting, what I do now, I think is probably one of the most fun part of making games. All teams have their own merits in terms of fulfillment for the job. But we are we're right in the center where we create what I think, in my opinion, what is the essence of a game, which is the gameplay, which is the fun. Obviously, writing is so important, especially for games like BG3. Yes. But I've always been more of a mechanics type of player. I like to explore the mechanics of the game, not so much the narrative. So for me, this is like the perfect place in a video game team.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting because, like, I think when we think about, you know, the more sort of technical-based jobs in gaming, you know, with scripting and with coding and all that sort of thing, the main sort of obstacle a lot of people have to, like, you know, taking the leap and learning more about them, or maybe even taking steps to get into it, is, well, I didn't do a degree, or I didn't do that, or I don't understand how to get into that. But it sounds like, from talking to a lot of people now, that a lot of it is learning on the job. Yeah,
I mean, especially with some of the companies that have their own in-house tools, it is difficult to learn exactly their tool set, but it is important. For example, I think for both these and I think the Ubisoft job, when I was applying that, I had doubled on my own time in C#, so I could know how to script, which I know the logic of coding, which helps and translates into most languages. But for things like, I think there are fields in games that pretty much require a degree. I think going into coding, self-taught is probably harder. And going to scripting, same as art. Art feels like something that's harder. Maybe that's just my perspective from the outside. Scripting, I think, actually benefits a lot from having a team with diverse backgrounds. Okay. Because we create quests, we come up with ideas all the time, and the more different kind of baseline we have, the more we can bring variety to the table. I think it's a good example. When I started at UB, it was 4 juniors of us that started in the quest team. And it was really funny because I came from architecture background, another came from web design background, another came from like fine arts background, and another came from alpinism.
what?
Yeah, like studying alpinism. Apparently that's the thing, and I was like, that's incredible. But everyone had such a different view.
It's a diverse set of skills, you know.
It's extremely useful. Even here we have people in Larian from all sorts of different backgrounds. A lot of people come from a video game degree.
Yeah.
I think it helps. Definitely helps. But I think it's not to be underestimated that whatever experience you have before, you can bring something to the table with it.
Well, that's what I'm hearing, you know, chatting to people on this couch, and like I think it's really important to sort of to hear those stories and tell people about it, because I think so many people, myself included, get a little bit intimidated when they hear about, you know, all the technical aspects to a job like yours. But it sounds like, you know, you've obviously got the skills, of course, and you've worked at it very hard over the years, but there is an element of, you know, there's a learning as you go, because all different companies have their own tool sets.
No, definitely. I think knowing a video game engine definitely helps, but you don't expect to know everything going in.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
First half a year you'll be learning all the time. Everything will be new, and I think for me, I've noticed that it takes about a year in a new job of this, which I've had only two, the Larian and the Ubisoft job of video game.
Yeah.
That it took me both cases about a year to start feeling comfortable with the job and start thinking that I know what I'm doing. In the first year, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. How is it happening? And everything is too fast. But you always get to the point. For me, it's about the year. Everyone will be different, depending on what they're comfortable with. But yeah, and it's great.
Because you came, and I love the story as well, you came to Larian after Early Access had launched.
Yeah, true.
So you had played the game, because you obviously love playing games.
Yeah.
So when did you first hear about it?
So I heard about Larian with DOS 1, Divinity Original Sin 1, back maybe when the Definitive Edition came out, I think. And I remember playing it, and I couldn't finish it because I was stuck. I always like to play games with the hardest difficulties, and I was playing the honor mode, and I think it took me 30 tries to get out of the initial area, but eventually I met some weird old man on the beach who destroyed me, and I quit there. But then those two came out, and I played through those two. That was amazing. So I loved Larian already. And in work, we were talking about Larian. Everyone loves it. And I had a lot of friends who played the games. So when BG3 was announced, made by Larian, I was actually very excited, because also Baldur's Gate 2 holds a very special place in my heart. I haven't played it. I haven't finished it. I've played started many times, but my cousin Ivo, he's 6 years older than me. So when I was like 5 and 6, he would be playing Baldur's Gate 2 non-stop and talking to me non-stop about it. So I was like, oh, it's Baldur's Gate. Like I love the franchise. I haven't played it because it was too complicated for me when I was like 7.
Yeah.
But I tried to get into it later. Couldn't quite get into properly get into it. And I was like, Larian's great. And then it was when I was moving back to UK. I wanted to move back with my partner because she was finishing her master's, and just after COVID. And Larian didn't have a studio in the UK at the time, so I spent maybe 3 months applying for jobs around London area, and there was a few things that were almost ready, but one position shut down, so they stopped hiring for it, and everything kind of aligned, and then the office opened in Guildford, and I was like, I never knew there was an office, and it was just a brand new office, and it was immediately like, this is the thing, this is like the dream. It's happening, and I didn't believe it until it happened. It was great.
So you played the early access build.
Oh, sorry. I went all around. So indeed, whenever I was trying not to play the early access, to be honest, because
you don't usually play early access.
Yeah, I usually burn out myself on early access titles.
Me with Hades 2.
Yeah, exactly. I already played like 20 hours of Hades 2 when it came out, early access. So now, I didn't want to do the BG3, but when I applied for the job, I was like, I need to know what I'm applying for. So I sit down and play through it, and I loved it. And it was really funny because I really, really loved Lae'zel as a character. I played through probably 60. I spent 60 hours in my first playthrough discovering every little bit, and it was amazing. And then I was like, Lae'zel, this is the best companion, and I really want to know what happens to the Creche. And then I get to the little port, and it's like end of early access. I'm like, no. And it's really funny because after I joined, the first thing they gave me to do was the Creche, and I actually ended up designing the Creche,
Which is
and I ended up designing Lae'zel. So it was wild. It was like I didn't. Yeah.
Just have
it
a
was
moment
great.
of being like, what is my life?
And then coincidences kept happening because then I discovered, because I'm from Bulgaria, I discovered Lae'zel's voice actress is Bulgarian, and also a friend of mine knows her. I was like, what is this small world? What's going on?
It was meant to be.
Yeah, so it was great. We met eventually with Deborah at one of the one event. It was very nice.
That's lovely. Aoife7 says, I feel like because there wasn't much of a game education 20 to 30 years ago led to a lot of people having unconventional paths to games development. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Mihail playing VG3 early access. Boy, I need to go fix this game.
That was 100% not my attitude going into it. I adored it.
You were like, I am locked in, I'm ready. Salo, I wonder what happens at the Creche. I don't know, you tell us.
yeah, basically.
That's so cool. So yeah, this is a good time to maybe talk about like what the scripting team does. So and I love all the stories that you have about this. Just it's kind of so you get the story of what the writing team, the narrative team, wants to achieve, and then you decide what pathways to take from that?
Kind of, yeah. So we get like a brief, like a few pages or maybe a page brief of what this region or what this specific situation is going to be about. And then usually the scripters sit down and analyze it and try, what does this brief mean for a Baldur's Gate 3 situation?
Yeah.
What it would look like in game. And then we would write up any potential risks we can find with it, any important things that needs to happen early, key moments, key beats, key branches in decisions, and then we talk it through with our writer. Usually we get like a writer assigned, and we will talk through with the writer, and we'll get a rough idea of what we want to do.
Yeah.
And then a scripter will sit down and we'll implement the bare bones, the structure of the situation before anyone else would come in. So we'll placing the characters, we'll placing the dialogues with like fake dialogue that we wrote, temporary placeholder dialogue, and then we pass it on to writers.
Because what's fascinating about that is when you talk about like building usable spaces, and like I think Larian games are so amazing because you're building a space and kind of allowing players to be like, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with it? So that presents a huge challenge for you in a sense that like,
it's a lot of freedom.
what are they going to do? You have to account for anything they might do in that space.
That is the complicated part of the job, but also one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I think one of the approaches that I really like about Larian, and it's one of the few studios I think that do it, is that we don't treat players as they're stupid. Because oftentimes you try to streamline things into the obvious path and the obvious direction. But we're like, just give them a playground and account for the big things, and then add some support for the small things, and you get like a more interactive sandbox environment that feels more real.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, for me, it's easier to design that way, because I would think about, okay, if it was like a real life or something, what do I expect, or like what do I find fun to do? What would be intuitive for me to want to do with this space? Or in the Creche, for example, there's an infirmary. What would a Creche infirmary be like? And then we start brainstorming from there. Obviously, we get some direction. We talk with level design. It's incredibly helpful having level designers. They have amazing ideas. A lot of the best moments in the game have come from collaborating with other teams. You have ideas, but like you kind of have to rely on the other teams, and they'll surprise you. Everything starts coming together just when everyone's job starts to wrap up.
Yeah.
And before that, you're just looking at your stuff. It's a little bit bare bone. You're never sure, but I think it's easier to design that way for me when we're just creating like a playground.
It's playground, but I get like it is. I mean, it's amazing because it's like it is so open, and and players rightfully feel so free, but you need to second guess anything that they might do with all of the tools at their disposal, and facilitate that.
Yeah.
And like, so how do you? Is it just a spreadsheet document of here's all the things I think might happen? Like how do you?
That's impossible to do. Like if you try to create like a branch of all the possible permutations,
Infinite, right?
It scales to,
Yeah.
it's impossible. What we do is we try to look at each kind of let's say a node separately, whether it's a situation, we call it, or a booster, it's a small situation,
Yes.
or even like individual character. What can you talk to them? What can you do there? Is there anything significant in the outcomes of it? Can you break it? Can you kill the character? Can you learn something new? And then we go around other situations like, where can you use this knowledge? Often it comes naturally.
Okay.
Like you, for example, you learn about infirmary, and then the doctor there will be, you need to report to the Inquisitor, and then it's like, but then how do you weave that into other situations? But if the players attack the doctor, then how do they learn about that? Then we have usually this called an N+1 ways to learn important information more than one way, and usually at least one way that cannot be messed up by the players.
Well, yeah, it's also like, how do you balance that with players who might want to like to mess around a little bit or be a bit chaotic? Because obviously you want to keep things open, but you also need to implement some consequences or some actions will lock them out of certain scenarios. So it's like.
Yeah, I think that's usually, I think a lot of games kind of stray away from, oh no, we can't lock players from the content, they need to see all the content.
Right.
But as Fen and Larian in general, they're like, well, if they do that, they're not going to see the content.
Yeah.
They're going to see it on another playthrough, and they don't do that. So it's easier to gate off things. Sometimes it does challenge. Sometimes there's very important critical story moments. I think one of those is, for example, I think the box, and in the Creche you need to place it in the we call it playing caster. I don't know if it had an official name on release, where Vlakith appears.
Yes,
it's like place it here, and it's like a very gated moment where it can only happen in one way, but you can also choose not to do it. And for a very long time, that was like a forced moment where we're like, oh, we need to tell this story. So it's very important. But then we played through it, and Sven played through it, and it's like, actually, you should have an option not to do it. And it's fine. And like players who miss some critical information, they may never meet the Emperor in their disguise form. But that's okay. We'll just account for it later.
Vlakith can also just turn around and kill you.
So yeah, that was so cool. Because when we were designing, we didn't have, I think, that option. Maybe I don't remember it in the initial Scripter version. Is usually when we do the dialogue, the first pass, it's only like the bare structure of it, and then maybe some interesting choice here and there if you think of it. But then writers will pick it up and sometimes change it a lot. And that came up as one of the choices from one of the writers, and
like it
was like so cool. That was amazing. I don't remember now. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it came up in a different way.
No, she definitely. I did it. She definitely can just be like, nope, you die. Basket of Gin says the Creche is legitimately one of my favorite areas. That whole region is amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
August 7 says scripters seem like such jacks of all trades. It's really intimidating. Just the spectrum of things that they need to understand.
Yeah.
So scripters are basically the DMs needing to figure out what kind of nonsense the players might get up to and figure out how to make it work. That is actually a brilliant analogy. That's so true.
That is a good analogy, yeah. I think what we like to say sometimes, I think Ilya, one of our senior scripters in Ghent, has a really cool anecdote, I guess, for this. It's like, if you imagine like a puppet show, like there's writers who would write the story, there's narrative designers who would create the whole thing, there's programmers who would make the puppets move physically, but we're the people who kind of move the strings and actually make the puppets execute the story that the writers have written. So it's very similar to what a DM would do, but in this case, this is, I think, even a better reference than the puppet show, because the puppet show is not interactive. The audience is not choosing. Here, we need to account for all of these things.
VJ says the Vlakith moment on my first playthrough had me staring at my monitor in confusion before bursting out laughing. It was amazing. It
was my first reaction so when I saw it. And there's a really cool moment in the development, especially in Vigitry we felt it, when everything in the beginning is non-voiced, no cinematics, it's just text, just characters standing, but then at some point the voice comes, and at some point the cinematics comes. And when you see the moments like this, when you've worked on and you've looked at them for 6 months or maybe a year in this raw form, and then you hear the sound and you see the cinematic, it's like, wow, this is so much cooler than I ever anticipated. That's exactly what I mean, that when all the other teams come up and they do their bit, you're like, this is even for me, it's completely surprising.
It must be quite fun then being kind of like at the center of the spider's web of a lot of different teams, because you get little glimpses of what everyone's working on, and then to see it all come together is like Wow, it's so cool.
It is.
Is there ever times where you're like, you're not sure it's going to work until that moment?
Almost always.
Always?
Always. I'm always putting some doubt into, is this fun enough? Is this clear enough? Is this engaging enough? But it is only after so many of these elements come together. Some come early, so we always test for like fun and engagement, but it's always a little bit of unsure.
Yes.
But to be honest, that's for the whole game, right?
Of course.
Like even BG3, it's hard to know how successful a game will be until it releases.
Yes.
Although early access helps, I think.
Massively. Tell us about edge cases.
So edge cases. So when we talk about the scripter's job, and you ask another department what we do, they're probably just going to say they do edge cases. Because it is probably one of the more intimidating things from the outside, especially to like writers or cinematic artists, because it is exactly what you were saying, allowing that player freedom.
Yeah.
But that also comes with like a lot of unexpected things.
Yes.
So we would normally take into account from the early stages of a situation being developed, we would take into account the main choices the players will make, any big things they can influence or interact, but then we go to the edge casing phase of the lifetime of a situation, and then we need to take into account everything. What if they use this spell? What if they kill this character? What if they distracted this character by performing a dance and he's no longer in the room, or a song? What's like all of these things? What if this character is here? Like if you brought Lae'zel, for example, in the Creche, what happens in the Creche if you bring Lae'zel and then she talks to this person, but then you remove her and you finish the Creche on its own? And then how does she get to learn all of that stuff? And a lot of these things start to come up, and it's this complicated web. It's a very long phase. I think it's more complicated than it seems. Less complicated than it seems. I think people are more intimidated with it, but it's actually quite fun. You sit down. Obviously, sometimes it's stressful if you missed something important late into development. You have to take into account. We had a moment like that. It's not very. It's a little stressful sometimes, but overall, this is my favorite part because this is our proof that we design things for the players to have fun. And a normal when a normal studio would say only 0.1% of players will see this, we're not going to spend time on it. And you're like, we're going to see like only 0.1% are going to see it. I'm going to do it for this one rated person. I love it. And then having the opportunity to do that, I think is incredibly rare, and I love it.
So at what point in your kind of in the development cycle do you start working on edge cases? Does that come later, or are you always thinking about when these sort of like outlying things can happen?
I mean, as a scripter, I can't help but always think about them. Sometimes there's a trap where you can start thinking about them too early. Because if you start going into so much detail early and then the situation changes a lot, then you've wasted a lot of time. So we normally we have this phase called white box phase, and this is before we go into edge casing. And then we'll iterate on the core flow, core dialogues. Not everything will be functioning. Sometimes you need to use debug options to skip through things. Fights will usually not be implemented, so you have to imagine. There will be no voice lines, but there will be some writing. And when we review that and when everyone's happy with that, we sign off the white box and then we go into orange box. And at that point, we start looking at the edge cases. This can take anywhere from a month to, I think, some situations 4, 5, 6 months, depending on how complicated they are, how big they are. I think the Creche took a very long time to get properly the core moments right.
We've got some little. Let's just see, like I should have remembered. I've got some lovely little clips here. I don't have any of the actual. Oh, here is this?
We
were talking about that, so let's have a wee check.
Yeah, that's the infirmary.
There you go. There's the infirmary. But yeah, so it is like you have to think about it early enough that you have time to catch it, but not so late that it's going to be.
For example, here, if you look at the broad strokes, it's you go and interact with the device, and the doctor will interrupt you. You have to speak to the doctor first, get into the device. You can succeed the roles or fail the roles. This is roughly what the situation is about.
There's quite a few checks for this as well.
There are quite a few checks, but then you start thinking, what if one person talks to the doctor while another goes and uses the device? Are they going to be able to stop them? And these are the sort of edge cases things that we start thinking later. Because they're not critical enough like we need to spend time on them, but
It's not
they're
game breaking.
Yeah, they're not gonna change the situation based on what we decide. So we leave them for later when everything else is solid.
But it is legitimately those, as you say, it's like, oh, only 1% of people are going to see that. But it is those moments that I think elevate a game to being like, you know, so beloved as BG3 is, because people are like, this is special.
Yeah.
Like this is a level of detail above and beyond.
It reacts to what they've done.
Yeah. Yes, it makes it feel like your story.
Most playthroughs, I think, will be unique in the end.
Yeah. Chris Link 73 says, so they need to think of all the depraved and unhinged things that the player might do.
100%. 100%.
And we know just how depraved and unhinged all of the players are.
Yeah.
Also, Ben says, if you're brave enough, a puppet show can be interactive. I am terrified
I don't wanna
to
know
tug
what
on
that
that thread. I'm not going to ask. No follow-up questions at all.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have? Well, let's talk about the Iron Throne.
Oh, yeah.
Because you worked on that quite a bit. And that's a huge moment of like stuff and things happening.
That's probably one of my favorite parts I worked on.
Yeah.
The Iron Throne was extremely fun because there was very little narrative in it. Most of the situation was carried by the gameplay, so a lot of it was what me and the level designers would do and the combat designers would do. So it was more heavy on my end. So I had to make more important decisions, obviously with all the teams involved. But it was pure gameplay. It was just like pure gameplay. How do we make this? And I think initially we set out with the idea that what we're going to do here is going to be quite different from the rest of the game, which makes it very fresh, especially in Act 3 when you've played so long. Yeah, and it's very difficult, and I love, as I said, I really love playing games on really, really high difficulties when I can. So having the opportunity to make something that's
is
difficult,
tricky.
It is tricky, it's difficult, but it's also completely optional.
Yeah.
So you have ways to end it sooner if you're not wanting to get involved too much. But you get some rewards, not too much, more narrative and kind of self-fulfillment rewards, I think.
It is difficult, but then I suppose in a way is it slightly easier on you that it is a self-contained space. It is a limited amount of time.
Correct.
There are very strict parameters in place for it.
Correct. Well, initially it wasn't even that. Like initially we had plans to make it without the timer, but have actual water like flooding and all of that, but that wasn't feasible. We didn't have any tech for that in the game. So we ended up, I think at some point we didn't even have a combat or any enemies. It was just the environment and traps, but that also didn't feel threatening enough. I think Sven's words were, when we were reviewing it, he was like, it's not urgent enough.
Yes.
But what does urgent mean? How do we make something more urgent? And then there's a lot of iterations until we got it right, but then we introduced the enemies. It
absolutely is urgent now. I was stressed playing that.
We managed to get it urgent. But also we had it really complicated at the beginning. It was like this huge building with many different corridors, long ways. And eventually we simplified it because it's already complicated enough, but you have so little time and you need to make so many critical decisions. So the layout is this very simple cross shape, so that it's very readable. I think it's super important.
But you also have big decisions to make as a player. It's like, do I send all of? Do I split the party? Do I go after the hostages? Do I go after? Like, there's a lot of big decisions to make, and that's what makes it fun.
I think that was probably the core. The first pillar of the situation was like, you need to split the party and make sure everyone goes into different directions and does something useful. And we tried to keep it until the end.
Oh man,
it was very fun.
It's so fun. It's so fun. Alessia says, was it you I need to thank for sending Mizora with the bombing monsters? It's cut off, but like also hi guys. Hi.
Hello Alessio. Alessio is one of our
He's been on this couch. Yeah, he's been on the couch already.
Yeah. So it was me, but the spiders themselves came from the combat team. It was Abi who designed the spiders, and they were a lot of fun. We really tried to be nasty with Mizora there. I think we succeeded.
Oh, that's right. I remember that now. Of course, that's cruel. That's like, I had to restart it. I had to save scum that part because I was like, oh, those little spiders.
Yeah.
Just blowing everybody up. I think I used, like Dimension Door or something.
that is one of our ways. Like, how do you solve it? It's like Dimension Door is a good way.
Misty Step.
Misty Step. There's ways you can close the door behind the spiders. They can't get through.
There's always ways. There's always a way.
But we took into account things like, what if you Dimension Door Ravenguard before she appears? So now you can
I tried to do that, I
you
think,
can
yeah.
even bring Omalum, who can teleport the player to the submarine, so he can directly teleport him to the submarine. So what does Mizora do? And then she will appear at the different locations as well. She has some fallback lines. It was pretty funny.
Sneaky. Terry Amby says, I adore the Iron Throne. It feels like such a unique puzzle in Act 3, and it really plays to the game's strengths of giving you maximum planning time.
Yeah, I'm glad there's some people who love it, some people who hate it, and I'm very happy that we pushed through with that. We didn't try to make everyone just enjoy it. There were some people who would hate it, some people who would love it, and I think there's a video game is a good balance of situations like that and situations which are more kind of
I think like a good DM, games should push you just to the very edge of your abilities. Like it should challenge you just enough that there's always a risk, but you can overcome it. Like that's the sign of a good DM and a good game. Chad is sharing their Iron Throne strats now. What's your strat? What's your top strat?
I mean, for me, it's I think speed potions incredibly important. I think it was a rogue or monk that can do like three dashes in a turn. They can go around the whole place in one turn. It's incredibly useful. Magic missile is incredibly good. So you can open three doors with one action.
I love a magic missile. Oh my gosh.
What else? Yeah, there's a lot. There's a few things which I implemented to help people, which not many people saw. There's these little heat detectors in each corridor, which if they're blasted by fire, they shut the doors down. So you can, if you realize and think about it, when there's the room where all the Sehuagin, the enemies are coming from, you can just throw a fireball at the little thing and it will close the door so they can't come through. There's a lot of things, but it's a sandbox, so there's so many strategies. I've loved seeing actually solo playthroughs of one character being able to save everyone quick enough.
It's wild.
It's completely crazy.
Is that fun for you, having designed a lot of this, to see it out in the wild and having players do things that you never even thought about? Or is that terrifying because you're like, that's an edge case that I didn't even think about?
No, not at all. I'm super excited. I think the first week BG3 came out, I was constantly on Reddit, always Googling Iron Throne, Googling Lae'zel, Googling. I think I answered some people, so I didn't reveal that I was there. It was like, there were some bugs or something. And I was like, I don't know how to get this. It's like, in the next patch, this one might be fixed. I saw the patch notes. We had released the patch notes.
You're doing tech help surreptitiously.
And it goes like, by the way, you can do that in that situation. That'll make it easier. It's just funny.
Sneaky tech support, I love it.
Just going to help my excitement.
Tell me about the Netherstones and the unique problem that they presented.
Yeah, that wasn't actually something I designed, but I talked about it in a edge case talk I did last year. And I think I picked it because it's a really interesting case of how we handle like edge cases to such an extent. So the Netherstones, to people who haven't finished the game, there are these items which are absolutely critical to finishing the game. Usually in our game, we avoid objects like this because everything can be lost, everything can be destroyed, but these are the exceptions. There's 3 items called Netherstones. So if players lose it, they can't finish the game. So we needed to make sure that
they know.
Essentially, the big problem is not that if they lose it, the game will end. That's okay. It's that they lose it and they don't realize that they can't progress later. And then they play for 40 hours and they reach a point and now they can't do anything. So how do you make sure that doesn't happen? If they lose it, make sure you tell them immediately so they can reload.
Right.
So a lot of fallbacks were made for this. Some of them were, I think Michael Gooch was one of our scripters, was implementing them, maybe Tom Rikibor as well. But essentially, whenever you lose the Netherstone in an area that may disappear, like the Iron Throne, you only go there once.
Yeah.
So if you drop the Netherstone there are like, I think the Emperor will say things like, "You fool, don't drop it." But then what happens if you choose to leave it? In some cases, I think in one case we would show a game over screen, but in some cases, like the Iron Throne, it didn't make sense to show a game over screen because there's a lot of narrative happening the moment you leave. There's a cinematic of the thing exploding, then you go up there and there's confrontation with the wave servants and the beast, the Redbeard, the dwarf.
A lot going on,
There's so much going on, it's hard to find a place to insert, hey, you missed this important item, game over. So in these cases, it's actually easier to implement more content to handle this. So for example, losing the Netherstones in the Iron Throne or a few other locations may result in them finding their way back into the world somehow. One of them is, for example, by a fish who ate the Netherstone because Darantron exploded and you found it, and then you find the fish on the beach and you've got a little quest marker on it just to guide the player.
That's incredible.
Or, for example, the Steel Watch Foundry is another place that becomes inaccessible because it also explodes. Andras worked on that, one of our scripters in Guildford. And if you drop the Netherstone there, and then we say after it explodes, you can never enter this place again. Where is the Netherstone? And in this case, a bunch of kobolds found the Netherstones, and they're trying to run off and sell them. So you have 3 turns to stop them, or game over. So things like that, I think, are incredibly fun. And it's really, because it was Michael who told me, which was just mind-boggling, that sometimes these cases are so hard to find a good place to do it.
Yeah.
It's easier to write more dialogue and implement more situations to fix it. And it is also more rewarding for the player as well at the same time. So it's a win-win. It's amazing.
So much more fun than just getting a game over screen. Is you get a little bit of, like, imagine like the key to saving the world is now inside a fish's guts that's just washed up on the beach. Like
it's the best.
Serendipity. I love it. Lae'zel says also the hammer, throwing it into the void and it coming back made me giggle.
Yeah, the Orphic hammer. Yep.
Well,
also, I don't know if you know, but Raphael can also bring back the Orphic hammer and he gives you like this weird, it's like, I told you not to lose it. And it was just really funny.
So I love the little story you told me just before we went live as well about the little bit that you wrote into this epilogue that you don't think anyone's found.
Oh, I'm sure somebody, I think I saw one person mentioning it ever, but it's not something that people would mention, so I'm not sure how many people saw it. I think very few. But the epilogue we worked on for part 7, I think, it was great because it was like probably the most time we could spend on like doing little behaviors for characters. So they were quite a bit more complicated than our normal behaviors. So I get to play around with things like, Halcyon is going about when you're not talking to him. He's going about and having a drink, occasionally sitting by the fire. And every time he takes a drink, I would increase the counter by 1. And then if he takes 5 drinks, he gets drunk status. And then when he gets the drunk status, he can randomly choose one of his next destinations to go to the beach, and then he'll accidentally turn into a bear for 5 seconds and then turn back. And then go back and repeat the whole thing. But in order to see that, you need to wait for him to drink 5 times, which is random, because he can, I think, every time he picks a new place to go, it's like 25% chance that it's a drinking place. So he would go and drink, and then the next 5 minutes he'll pick again. So you need to wait for like 40 minutes or something in the epilogue, which normally people don't spend that much time on, to have a chance to even see that thing. So it was really fun. But that's, again, sometimes I do things for the one person on Reddit.
I was literally going to ask, I was like, be honest, how many times in this are you just doing it for your own amusement?
Yeah, when I can. I mean, within reason.
Within reason.
You obviously have more important things to do, but it wasn't too complicated to script. And
well, everyone's like, the epilogue party was a wonderful addition, and it really helped round out the ending. You did a couple of the epilogues as well, didn't you?
I did Lae'zel and I did Will, and also Minsk's halfling friend.
Oh yeah.
So they were my things in the epilogue. Although I didn't work on Will throughout the game, I only did some fixes and Will in the epilogue. Same with Halcyon. I didn't do almost anything with Halcyon throughout the game.
When we say, because you worked mostly on Lae'zel, right?
Yeah.
So you did most of her story moments and stuff. So what does that entail? Does that mean you're getting those moments through, and then you're sort of pathfinding through each of those?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I came after early access, so some of her early story and motivation had already been established, which greatly helped. But it was essentially at the beginning a big conversation between me and Bo, who was the companion overseer at the time, and they were creating like a story arc for each character. So for Lae'zel, it was something about fighting against indoctrination and finding herself, and I don't remember the specifics now and how we worded it, but we have this broad idea of a story, and then where do we fit it within the acts?
Yes.
Because we had the Creche, which was a huge moment for her.
Yeah.
Act 2 didn't have that much for Lae'zel, because there weren't many places that you can fit. But how do you keep progressing her story? So you start thinking about things like that.
Well, how does she react to the world and what's happening around her?
So you didn't start with any specific list of things, but we started with these broad strokes, and then we started finding places to insert moments. We knew about Orpheus for a long time.
Yeah.
even had a bigger Lae'zel moment in that middle portion bit after Act 2 and Act 3, where you first meet Orpheus. We had like a Lae'zel moment there, which we moved out to the next morning later because it was too crowded. But it is identifying these moments to tell the full story, and then me thinking on gameplay side. But is there like any branches that we haven't covered? Is it satisfying in terms of kind of like challenge, reward? Is it more intense at certain parts, less intense at others? It was a very close relationship working with Kevin, Lae'zel's writer. He knew everything about her, and I knew everything about her, and together we would really get into detail how all the situations play out. Do they deliver the narrative beats that we wanted?
Yes.
Do we need to add more? And then me on my end thinking about how do we make this possible in gameplay. I remember at some point I had like a whiteboard in the office on both sides just with Lae'zel's journal updates. I was like, how do we make this work? And I spent like maybe a full day or maybe more just typing all the possible ways, orders of things you can do things, and permutations. Have you met Vos before? Did you do Creche before? Have you spoken to Vlakit? Have you gotten the hammer? Have you spoken to Raphael? And it was a lot, but in the end, it's manageable.
Wow! So it really does sound like. I mean, I think a lot of people when they think about scripting, they don't realize how creative a role it is.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a very good mix of design, and it comes with portions, right? Sometimes you spend more time on design, sometimes spend more time fixing bugs and implementing. So it is refreshing.
So I'm gonna say we've got about 10 minutes left, so if you do have questions, stick them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them now. But until then, I mean, what would you say, so for people who are watching and thinking like, hey, that sounds fucking awesome, how do I become a gameplay scripter? What would you say are the most important like skills that they can work on, or maybe, I don't know, programming tools that they can pick up and try? Like what are the most important things to you to becoming? Yeah,
I think there's few important soft skills. In terms of hard skills, I think it doesn't matter as much. Knowing a programming language helps. Getting into something like Unity or Unreal helps, and roughly getting your head around there definitely will greatly help. But I think soft skills are more important. I think some of the more, I think these are probably the requirements to be able to do the job.
Yeah.
Things like being able to understand programming logic.
Right.
I think also being able to communicate well complicated ideas simply.
Right.
That's super important in this job. But I think what would make you kind of stand out and really enjoy the job as well is if you can keep a more open mind.
Okay.
Things like being open to changes and feedback more. That's quite difficult because often you spend a long time working on something, but it's hard to see that there's defects and problems that other people can easily help with.
Well, our last guest on the sofa was Sarah Hurst, who said, very importantly, you need to learn how to kill your babies. So
that is a big saying in Larian. Yeah, you need to learn how to kill your babies, indeed. What else would be important? I think just thinking systemically and how to create, rather than, maybe that's too specific to already working in there. I wouldn't say that's for an entry thing.
Well, what's your favorite thing about what you do? Like, what's the best part of the job, in your opinion?
I think the best part of the job is really just implementing these weird edge case moments to me. I really love it.
It's fun.
It is fun. It is sometimes driving me crazy by how much you need to keep in mind, but it is, I think, for me, probably most rewarding at the end when everything works and you play through the situation and other people play it, and every time someone discovers, oh, you know, this was a thing. It was great. I love that.
What are, have you seen, like, obviously you play a lot of games. Are there any other games that you've played recently that you're like, that's a good example of what gameplay scripting is or can be?
Good question.
Or is that a bit of a busman's holiday and you try not to think about it when
I don't try to think about it too much, to be honest. I know a lot of people say that games are ruined, but they're really not for me.
No.
I think recently I've not been playing that many games with similar scripting systems.
Honestly, it feels like BG3 seems like the most extreme, biggest example of doing what you do, which you have really ended up in the perfect place.
No, I think you can see scripting in all games, and definitely there's very many different ways to do it. But I don't necessarily, I can't think of a specific scripting example from other games that caught my attention recently.
What have you been playing recently that you enjoy?
Yeah, I have been playing, so probably the game that caught my attention the last 2 years the most, and I keep talking about it to everyone I meet, is Outer Wilds.
Yes.
I don't know if you've played it,
yes,
but it's a life-changing game. Also Tunic right after I played, it's very similar. Highly recommend.
So cute.
And recently I've really enjoyed a little app on my phone called Pokemon Sleep. And a lot of people gloss over it. And
That's
will be
not
like,
what I thought you were going to
it's a
say.
sleep tracking app. It is on the surface, but it is min-maxer heaven.
Wow.
Like, I love min-maxing. And this game makes me open spreadsheets and plan for like meals for like weeks ahead.
Wow.
It's my favorite Pokemon game I've ever played.
Getting a real insight into how your brain works. Amazing.
Yeah.
VJ Amalia says, have there been any moments where a scripting error has resulted in unexpected but fun results?
Yes, 100%. What would be a good example for that? There's a lot of times we would unintentionally or not realize we've bugged something, and then
it's not a bug, it's a feature.
it becomes an amazing feature. I think a good example of a bug here, it's not maybe not entirely as a scripting issue, kind of oversight, let's say, was it was on my end. It was Voss. When you meet him in Act 1 with the dragon, he's carrying this really cool sword, and he only appears there for a split second, and then he flies off, always. He never stays for the fight. But some players had discovered that if you use a specific skill, I think it's the honey paws or the heat metal, and cast it on Voss, he can drop the sword. And it's amazing, right?
That's a legendary item.
It comes as a bug. It is a legendary item. It comes as a bug on our end. And I remember I looked at it, and why it was a bug, because when you pick up that sword, this is the sword that Lae'zel receives at the end of her quest.
At the very end.
That's the last reward she gets. And I had scripted some logic which says whenever the sword is obtained, start talking about the sword. So the bug comes, and players in Act 1 pick it up, and Lae'zel starts talking about Orpheus. And like, oh no, what's happening? This is spoilers. And that comes logged as a bug, right? And I take it to the system designers, and I'm like, well, we may need to prevent Voss from losing the sword. But they're like, or maybe it was me going like, is it a problem that you obtained the legendary item so soon? And they were like, no, let's keep it. Like, players figured it out. So we ended up, actually, it was post-release. We ended up adding more dialogue and more support after most of the actors had clocked off, but Devereaux was still available. So we added some more new lines and dialogues just to support that a little bit.
Cool.
And I just love it. I just love it. Stuff like that are just the best.
Being able to be so agile and adapting to things like that is just so
It's the company.
fun.
It's not. I think most companies would say fix it, right? Not support it.
But the fact that we can do
it's
that
amazing.
is so
It's
fun.
very fulfilling on my end as well.
Tara Huz says, is there any way to have automated testing for the scripts, or do you have to raw dog the QA team every time you change anything? Thank you for the phrasing.
Yeah. I mean, we have some automated tests already, mostly for systemic features, things like does attacking a character result in the correct programming events being sent and stuff like that. There's constantly tests running, and they report issues. For BG3, we didn't have anything for scripting, unfortunately, although it is not out of the question to imagine a world where we script tests for each situation. I think it's very logical and probably something we will look into at some point in the future, because there is too much testing for QA to do. There's too many branches, too much permutations.
Wild.
At some point we had like the whole company doing playtesting sometime before release, regardless of department, just spend a day testing the game, because QA was just, it's not enough. The game is too big, we're bound to miss stuff. So I think thinking about automation testing is the right direction. It's a very good question.
What's the best bug that you found?
Oh, to be honest, I was thinking about this question because you sent me a bunch of things to prepare about this, and I had prepared the Voss sword thing because to me that is the best bug I've ever worked on. But I'm sure there's many more I can think
I'm
of.
sure there's got to be. Well, Terry MB says, not a question, just wanted to say thank you so much, Larian, for these interviews. I never realised how many skills went into making games and how many great people do so many great things.
Oh,
And you do great things.
thank you.
Look at all
You
these
too,
great
Aoife.
things.
You're a
I'm
big part of it as well.
I'm just a yapper. I'm just here for the here for the vibes.
It's
Developing
all part of it.
atmospheres.
It's all part of it.
No, but seriously, I love getting to chat to everybody, but like just especially like sections like scripting and things like that, departments that I just didn't really know a lot about before, but I have so much newfound appreciation every time I talk to someone from there.
I'm glad to hear.
You do really good work.
Thank you.
You don't need
Thank
me
you.
to tell you that, you know, but like you do.
We made a very good game.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I love
Well, thank
it
you
because
so
I
much.
play it.
Yeah, well, you did, and I love that as well. I love that like you played it, and here you are, working on it, making it happen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Aoife. It was
Please come and visit us again sometime. We would love to have you. Oh, you haven't pet us yet.
great. Oh no! How could we forget that? Oh,
Yeah. The helm,
thank
we
you
must
for
go.
reminding me.
The helm. Well, yes. Do be sure to follow us on all social media channels. It's Larian Studios, unless you're watching this on YouTube, which is Larian CFH. That's Larian Channel from Hell. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Aoife.
We will see you. We'll be playing the game again next week. I'll be playing our Dark Urge run and probably failing horribly, setting things on fire, dying several times, but hey, it'll just be between me and you. So, see you then. Bye!
Bye, guys.